What is our true nature and how does it exist in the entire universe? Let's find out. There are a group of texts that continually bring our mind back to the ever-present eternal reality of existence that most people in the world forget about. And those group of texts are the Nididhyasana texts, which are a group of texts for those on the cusp of enlightenment or who have gone beyond the pale of enlightenment. And one of those great Nididhyasana texts is the Avadhuta Gita. Now, this is what is known as the most dangerous spiritual book in the world, particularly because it's dangerous to your ego, the existence of your ego. And within the Avadhuta Gita, Lord Dattatreya is continually reminding us of our eternal, ever-present nature and trying to get us to realize that this idea of this identity persona system that we think we are is actually an illusion. So let me read to you a very, very important verse about our true and eternal nature from the Avadhuta Gita. The Atman exists always, everywhere, and in everything. It is eternal and unchanging. Everything in this world is void, and again, it is filled with the Atman. Realize, I am that Atman. Do not doubt this. So Lord Dattatreya explains in this verse that the Atman is everywhere and within everything. You often hear me say that the Atman, or the undifferentiated consciousness of reality, which is what the Atman is immanent within reality but also transcends it. And so that's one of the best explanations I can give in relation to the undifferentiated consciousness of Atman, which is identical with the Brahman, the ultimate reality. And so, as I said, it is immanent within reality, but also transcends it. And so that may seem a paradox, but often in Eastern spirituality and philosophy, paradox is the best way to explain the nature of reality. That's why there's an old phrase within the Eastern traditions that the universe produces consciousness and consciousness evokes the universe. There is this great paradox, but this is what we would call the mutual arising of reality, which in Chinese there's a word called shangsheng, which is the mutual arising of reality itself. And so we're not arguing about the chicken and the egg here because they both mutually arise. And so that's why Atman is immanent within reality, but also transcends it. And so we have that Atman within ourselves, but the Brahman is everywhere. It's in everything. The Atman is in everything. It is everywhere. And interestingly enough, in this verse, Dattatreya says that everything in this world is void, and yet it is filled with Atman. Now, you don't want to misinterpret this or relate this in any sense to Buddhism when we talk about shunyata, right? When we talk about the empty cognizance of reality. Or a lot of people actually don't translate shunyata in its correct sense, and they just think that reality itself is empty and there's nothing there. But obviously shunyata is related to, in some sense, empty cognizance. And so that's how Buddhism builds a lot of its philosophical and spiritual scaffoldings for people to understand the true nature of consciousness. But I won't go into that scaffolding in the Buddhist terms and teachings in relation to consciousness in this video, because we'll stick to the Avadhuta Gita. But you don't want to get caught up in the English translation when you look at void as opposed to it being filled with Atman, because there's a lot of misunderstanding, particularly from the Buddhist perspective, of what Atman is, because you have the idea of Anatman, which is the non-self, and then there is this belief that Atman is like a soul, but soul really in Sanskrit is Jivatman, is the Jiva, the ego persona system, which is entangled with the Atman, the undifferentiated consciousness. And that soul is what comes back life after life. Atman is not soul. Atman is undifferentiated consciousness. Now you need to understand that. It's undifferentiated. A soul is differentiated. It is still, in some sense, separate from the ultimate reality. And so it hasn't completely merged into the Brahman. And so the Jivatman continues to come back life after life. And this is often where Buddhists make a mistake in understanding what the Atman is. And so they think that there's this battle between voidness and substance, right? But the idea here, and even you find this in Vajrayana Buddhism, it's not like the void is essentially just completely nothing and empty. There's a reality to it that brings life into existence. It's similar to the concept of Uchi in Taoism, Tao in stillness. gives birth to Tai Chi, Tao in motion, which then gives birth to yin and yang, and then the 10,000 things. And so that is exactly the same as Advaita Vedanta, right? So Nirguna Brahman is Brahman without qualities, and you could say that that's the ultimate reality, and it gives birth to Saguna Brahman, which is Brahman with qualities, which is the world around us, which is the world of nature, including the mind and physical body and all the energy of the universe. This is what Saguna is. It has qualities, right? And so you don't want to confuse this. You don't want to make this thing between substance and void. And you need to think about it in the sense like the Neo-Confucians, where the Neo-Confucians will say that it's completely empty, but there's an energy there that resides in the emptiness. It's a divine, eternal energy. And it's not to say that Atman is an energy, right? Because it's undifferentiated consciousness, but consciousness itself can be equated to energy. And a lot of people will relate this type of idea to science when they talk about dark matter. But I don't want to speak about that because science is its own discipline in and of itself. And I think there's too many loose connections between Eastern spirituality and science, and people can exaggerate these connections. So we don't want to go down that rabbit hole there. But you need to understand that the Atman is the divine Brahman, is the ultimate reality. Now, you could say it's void because it is undifferentiated consciousness, right? We're just talking about language here. And this is why I often say that when we look at Buddhism, Taoism, and Hinduism, a lot of the differences between the three traditions is pure linguistics. It's pure language. It's pure terminology, the differences in how we understand the same reality in a lot of sense, but we have a different philosophical interpretation of that same reality. Now, a lot of people don't think about that, but particularly in India, that is acknowledged a lot because we have non-dual and dualistic schools and non-theistic schools. And these schools, they all sort of speak about this similar reality, but there's this different philosophical interpretation of that reality. And so in getting back to what Ashtavakra is saying here, the Atman is everywhere and it's in everything, right? It's not something that we need to think about. It's something that we need to come back into harmony with. And once we down-regulate our jiva, our ego persona system, and we begin to peel those layers away, then we start to feel it actually. We can feel it in everything there is. And so his advice in this verse is realize that you are that Atman. Realize that you are that ultimate reality that is the fundamental core of all of existence. You are that. You have never been separate from that. The illusion of the jiva makes you believe that you are separate from it. And then what happens in life is we continually are conditioned and we believe in this identity. And so the more we do that as we live, the more we forget the ultimate reality. And that's why a lot of people in this day and age who are focused on materialism have a very awkward relationship with spiritual traditions, even to the point where they don't want to even know anything about them. But once you come across this great knowledge, there's no ignoring it. You are that. And Dattatreya explains in this verse, once you remember that you are that and you come into abidance, that you are it and you begin to feel it, not only within yourself, but within everything that there is, then there is no doubt about this. And that is his last piece of advice in this verse. Do not doubt this. You are that. And you've never been anything else, because the true nature of reality is eternal. But we've bought into this illusion that the physical world around us and this physical body is the only game in town. But the real game and the only game that ever existed is the Atman, which is identical with Brahman. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti.